For the past 60 days, I replaced my M1 MacBook Air with the newer M2 MacBook Air, and I'm ready to talk about the good, the bad, and actually let's get started by talking about the ugly, which is kind of ironic. You see, I actually think this laptop is beautiful. It's thin, it's sleek, the display looks great, and I absolutely love this midnight color. It's a little hard to capture in video, but it has a really nice blue tint to it. It's chef's kiss. It's such a great color, but the fingerprints are another story altogether. So disclaimer first, I'm not fingerprints bother me, guys. So with my phones, my tablets, or my laptops in general, I just look at fingerprints as a sign that I'm actually using my gear. Now, when I try to film a product, I want it to look clean, and I pretty much had to wipe down this laptop every time I moved it. So basically, if you're bothered by fingerprints, trust me, get one of the other colors. I also had the Starlight version originally, and it was great. I have the space gray and the silver models of the M1 and M2 MacBook Pro, and they also don't have this problem. Now, if on the other hand, you're like me and you're not super bothered by fingerprints, this color is so nice. As far as the new form factor, I did mention in my initial comparisons that I really liked the typing experience on the M1 MacBook Air because it's slightly tilted forward and it was thinner in the front. Now, after typing on the M2 MacBook Air for 2 months, I have absolutely no issues with the front digging into my wrist. And of course, the keyboard itself is outstanding. There's no give it all to the board itself. The keys are responsive, have a good amount of bounce back. And this has been a strength for Apple for a few years now, and it just continues with this model. The trackpad is slightly larger than the M1 version, not really enough to make a noticeable difference for most users, but it's an excellent trackpad. It's super accurate, and you can press down anywhere, unlike the springboard design trackpads that we sometimes see on other laptops. Now, the port situation, I'm not 100% in love with what Apple did here, and there were opportunities for improvements. So we have 2 Thunderbolt/USB 4 ports, just like with the M1 model, and they're both on the left side, so I could only attach accessories from the left. I also wish Apple upgraded these ports so that we could have support for multiple external displays, but we're still limited to a single additional display. Apple did add a MagSafe 3 port, which is great because I can now safely charge my MacBook Air and I don't need to worry about one of the dogs or me inadvertently ripping the cord out and then sending this MacBook flying across the room. But Apple added this port on the left side, the same side as the other 2 ports, so I can still only charge this MacBook from one side. I would have loved to have one Thunderbolt port on each side so I could charge or attach accessories from either side. Or if they just added the MagSafe port on the right side, then I would still have the option of charging this MacBook from the most convenient side because I can use a USB-C cable. Now, the M2 MacBook Air can accept fast charging, but it only comes with a 30-watt adapter, which you can't upgrade to either a 35-watt dual USB-C power port adapter or a 67-watt single port adapter, and both of them are $20. And that brings me to today's sponsor, Basis, and the 2 charging accessories that I've been using for the past few months. When I travel, I use this 20,000 milliamp hour 100-watt power bank. It's called the Blade. I love the dimensions because it's extremely thin for how powerful it is. It has 2 USB-C ports and 2 USB-A ports, so I can charge up to 4 devices at once. And I love the LED display, which shows me things like battery level, charging power, and also charging and recharging times. The 100-watt output also means that I can give the M2 MacBook Air all the power that it needs. Plus, I can charge my iPhone 14 Pro and the Apple Watch Ultra all at the same time. Now, before we get to battery life, when I'm in the studio, I use the 100-watt Power Combo Power Strip. Again, I have plenty of power dedicated to the M2 MacBook Air. I have 2 USB-C ports and 2 USB-A ports. And because the GaNTech allows for smaller components, there are 2 additional outlets, so it can essentially act as a power strip, and it's a great option if you want to set up a charging hub. So if you're looking for more versatile charging accessories for your office or for when you travel, check out these 2 great options for Basis. I'll have links for you in the description. And again, thank you to Basis for sponsoring this portion of the video. Okay, so all this talk about charging brings me to battery life. I was super happy with the battery life on my M1 MacBook Air, and the M2 seems to be like, it might be a little bit behind it. I mean like very little. And this is where I prioritize actual life use over just the specs. The M1 MacBook Air might last 20 to 30 minutes longer if I run a test, but that never results in a practical real life difference because both of these MacBooks easily last me a full day of work, and I never really get down to the final 30 minutes without getting a charge. Now, to be fair, I'm probably running the display on the M2 MacBook Air brighter on a daily basis because it goes up to 500 nits versus 400 on the M1, and when I need to deal with direct sunlight or any type of reflection, I'm gonna turn the brightness all the way up. As far as the display quality, I absolutely love this new display. I like that it supports 1 billion colors versus 16.7 million on the M1. It's larger at 13.6 inches, it has smaller bezels, and I already mentioned that it's brighter. It is a 60 Hz display, unlike the ProMotion display on the 14 and 16 inch MacBook Pro models, but it's still a really nice upgrade from the M1. The one knock that you hear about this display is the notch, but here's the thing. If you said, Sagi, would you rather not have the notch? I would ask, do I get to keep this new form factor, the smaller bezels, and the new camera module? If the answer is yes, then of course I'd rather not have it. But if it means that I have to give up on those things for a part of the display that I never use and is essentially blacked out whenever I'm watching video, then the answer is no. The one improvement I would want, since we do have a notch, is Face ID. Now, I'm not an electrical engineer and I don't know what it would take, but when I look at the dynamic island on the new iPhone 14 Pro and how small they made the camera and Face ID modules there, I think it would be a great idea. I don't know, let me know what you think. Without Face ID, biometric authentication is done through Touch ID, and I've really liked this larger button and the row of full height function keys at the top. Now, I talked a little bit about the camera already, but it was upgraded from 720p on the M1 model to 1080p on this newer model, and it's a very noticeable upgrade. When you combine the hardware upgrade with the new ISP and the M2 chip and the overall image processing pipeline improvements, we're now getting much better image quality. Is it as good as the best dedicated webcams? No, of course not, but I don't really expect that from a laptop, and it is one of the best cameras that I have on a laptop, if not the best, and it's easily good enough for video calls. Now, the speakers I was a little worried about because Apple removed the typical speaker array that we see flanking the keyboard, and instead they used a 4-speaker system that's pretty well hidden in the hinge. So are these as good as the 14 or 16 inch MacBook Pro? No, but those laptops probably have the best speaker system of any of my laptops. The M2 MacBook Air speakers offer spatial audio. I don't know how they did it with this new design, but they get plenty loud, and the sound is surprisingly full, all things considered. And these are easily good enough to watch movies, to play some games, to listen to podcasts, and for your video calls. As far as processing power, nothing really changed since my initial comparisons. And we're getting better performance in the M1 for both single and multi-core performance, essentially the same short-term performance as the M2 MacBook Pro, but the MacBook Pro has superior sustained performance. And it's going to come down to what you plan on doing with your laptop. For the vast majority of tasks that most people do with these laptops, you're not going to notice a difference. And it's really nice to have a machine that's completely silent because there's no fan. If you need that additional performance, then I would actually recommend that you look at the 14-inch MacBook Pro instead of the M2 MacBook Pro, because the additional features that you get with the 14-inch model are definitely worth the price for someone who truly needs a performance machine. Again, at least in my opinion. Now I want to talk about the SSD, where the 256 gigabyte models have slower SSD speeds than the higher storage models, and even slower than the 256 gigabyte M1 MacBook Air. Now, I said this in my initial comparison, and it's still true now after 60 days. The slower speed hasn't made a bit of difference in my day-to-day work on this laptop, and I don't really see it as practically impacting the target audience for this MacBook. at the same time, I still think it's important that there's more transparency from Apple here about this discrepancy, because the optics are important here, and you don't want someone finding out about this later on and feeling like they were being misled. Again, whether or not it would actually make a meaningful difference isn't as important as how someone might feel about their purchase or the brand. Of course, I recommend that you consider upgrading from the base model, which starts at $1,200, and maybe think about getting 512 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigabytes of unified memory or RAM. This has nothing to do with the SSD speed. It's just that the M2 is such a powerful chip, and this MacBook should easily last you for a good number of years, so make sure that you have enough storage and RAM to last you. You can actually upgrade it to 24 gigabytes of RAM and go all the way up to 2 terabytes of storage, but of course expect to pay a premium for those upgrades. Now, all in all, I think that this is an excellent MacBook. I love the new design, the brighter and larger display, the improved webcam, the excellent performance, the small upgrades to the keyboard, and the fantastic battery life. My opportunities for improvements include having ports on both sides, upgrading the ports to support dual external displays, and adding Face ID. Now you should see whether the M2 MacBook Air is actually a better value than the M1 version. Click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.